Hi, I'm Emily Wrightson with Camac Retirement Group. Today I'm joined by Doug Fisher of Washington Strategy and Advocacy. Doug, thanks so much for being here today.
Happy to be here, Emily.
So, your background is in legislative policy, and previously you served as the tax counsel to the Senate Finance Committee. So we're really excited to hear your insights into Washington policy and what's going on.
Great.
Can you just start a little bit by telling us what's going on? What should we expect to see? What's Congress up to?
Sure, Emily. So currently, Congress is in full election mode. The election is about 6 months away, and Congress is unlikely to do anything substantive between now and the November election. I think after the election, though, is a time to focus on any kind of potential legislation, especially affecting retirement. There is a bill, a comprehensive retirement bill called the Retirement Enhancement and Savings Act that passed the Senate Finance Committee on a bipartisan basis. That bill includes sensible retirement reforms and some really interesting new ideas like pooled plans or MEPs, where unrelated employers can join a central plan and trust and save on administrative costs and investment fees. Senator Orrin Hatch, who is the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, is interested in passing that bill before he retires at the end of the year. So there's some potential to get that bill done before the end of the year. But before that, it's really unlikely we're going to see any kind of legislation, especially since the Republican Congress passed the first comprehensive tax reform in 30 years a couple months ago. And Congress extended the budget into 2019, so we won't have to suffer through new budget wars.
You touched on it a little bit in your response, but can you talk a little bit more? We've seen states pass a lot of legislation around ensuring that individuals have access to retirement plans, so states like Oregon and Vermont and Illinois. Do you anticipate that that's going to continue? Do you anticipate that the government's going to revisit that?
So I'm going to say yes to both of your questions. What the states are doing now is the states are filling the void that they perceive is left by Congress, and Congress's inability to solve what some believe is a coverage crisis. However, from my perspective, when I look at the numbers in terms of who's covered, who can afford to be covered, and who wants to be covered, I look at the coverage crisis as more of a coverage challenge. So the states, and they're probably half of the states right now, are in some form or another looking at whether they can actually set up state-run retirement plans and either mandate or encourage coverage by private sector employers. I'm very the state that has actually opened their program is Oregon, which mandates coverage by private sector employers if they don't otherwise provide a plan. And what we're finding out is the early activity in the plan shows that a lot of participants that have been enrolled are unenrolling or opting out. It's about 30% now. New York just passed a voluntary retirement system, I think this week, where plan sponsors can use it as a vehicle if they don't otherwise have a provider. So I think what that trend is going to happen and continue on over the next couple of years. I also think that the Congress will also readdress the coverage, I call it the coverage challenge, in the coming year. Congressman Richie Neal, the ranking Democrat on the Ways and Means Committee, introduced a bill this year that, and a pretty radical bill that would require all plan sponsors that don't otherwise provide a plan to cover all non-seasonal employees. So it is a mandate for retirement plan coverage. Now that bill, Congressman Richie Neal may become chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. That's the tax writing committee of the House of Representatives. And clearly, if he becomes chairman after this election, which could very well be, he's clearly going to move that bill. Now, his idea is to say that if you pass a federal solution, that would trump or preempt any of the state bills that have not passed to date. And I think you're going to find that with respect to state-provided retirement coverage, it is a complicated process and costly endeavor to build a system that's efficient and functions. And I think states are going to find it's difficult to attract and keep employees such that there's enough of account balance where it makes it worthwhile.
That's interesting. So you think that there's a possible chance that this could get passed, and then that would kind of supersede all of those other ones out there? How much appetite do you think the others will have in passing this and ensuring coverage?
Well, the part of even though we applaud what Congressman Neal's doing in trying to solve the coverage challenge, let's say, because I don't think it's really crisis by any stretch. I think it's going to run into pretty stiff opposition especially by Republicans who will oppose anything that's mandated in the benefits area. And we saw this really loud and clear with respect to the mandate on healthcare reform. But there's probably some middle ground between the mandate and a voluntary system where the two parties could work together to at least improve the option of coverage in the middle. I think it's very important. The bill importance really is putting the coverage debate and some creative solutions up front and putting those out there for debate. I think
Great.
That's the value of it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your thoughts there. So kind of switching topics a little bit around to move to fees. So we've seen fees be huge in the retirement industry, and this concern about, from the plan sponsor perspective, driving down fees and being aware of what you're paying, and kind of a shift towards transparency and the importance of that on the participant side, and lawsuits out there around this topic. So can you give your thoughts or perspectives? Do you anticipate the government involvement eventually in ensuring transparency of fees, possibly changing or providing some guidance on this?
Well, I think the actual focus on fees started really with the interest by George Miller, the former senior member and chair of the House Labor Committee. And I think that even though he didn't pass legislation, it has really had the effect, along with the litigation risk, of really pushing down investment administrative fees significantly to the advantage of participants over the years. I think, Emily, that trend will continue, but I think there is a point where record keeping and investment costs can probably go no further down and still provide viable quality services. So I think the other area is, and what the fee debate has brought is in essence, a equalization or a leveling of fees based on participants. And this was a result of really pressures to unbundle plans. And by unbundling, that means plan sponsors are getting more sensitive because of fiduciary and litigation risk to unbundle the record keeping from the investment management in order to meet their either real or perceived fiduciary risk, whether it's an ERISA or a non-ERISA covered plan, for example, in the tax-exempt or public sector. I think the idea of allocating fees by participant is a trend that will clearly continue. It's not required by ERISA, but it's a trend that many plan sponsors feel is appropriate and reduces the risk of fiduciary liability. One thing I will mention, when we were involved in this sort of unbundling of the fee debate, it is very regressive in its nature. When you think about it, when you bundle the plan, meaning the record keeping or the investment management pays for some of the record keeping, what happens is when you charge on an investment management basis, the larger accounts pay a greater share for the same services than the smaller accounts. So when you think about it, it's like our tax system. It's very progressive, where $1 million account will pay for its account and pay for either younger people or smaller accounts. When you move to a per head or per capita fee structure, which is where we're going in the industry, it becomes regressive in nature, where smaller accounts are paying a larger percentage of those fees. But I think that trend will continue.
Great, thank you. So on a kind of a similar hot topic that we've been hearing a lot about lately is cybersecurity and data security, and even recently with Facebook and some of the other social media presences. Do you think that there's going to be more of a push from a government perspective to ensure financial security of data for participants, for retirement participants?
I certainly do. And just the other day, I was at the NAPA, that's the National Association of Plan Administrators and Professionals. We had gathered for the national conference in Nashville, and a small independent financial advisor and record keeper came up and was complaining that he had to spend almost $1 million on developing privacy and encryption and testing to ensure that the personally identifiable information, the investment information, and the characteristics of the information that are received from the plan sponsor through feeds to the retirement plan, they're safe and secure from theft or cyber. And I think a lot of plan sponsors, especially smaller ones, aren't thinking about that an individual in a retirement plan, that information has a Social Security under it, it has an account balance, it has their address, it doesn't have their credit card or that kind of information, or Facebook information, which we think in some cases is more vulnerable or more sensitive, but it really isn't. So I think plan sponsors are taking this more seriously. They need to do that because it is sensitive and important financial information. I think one of the area for consultants to especially focus on when they're doing searches or reviews of the capability of record keepers is to ensure that they have that the TPA or the record keeper or the advisor has appropriate controls in place, because this is important financial information.
Agreed, and it's extremely costly to maintain and keep up, and always changing, and so I think it's a big challenge that the record keepers and sponsors will need to be on top of.
They will, and there's no option to not do it.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
They have to invest whatever it takes.
Let's chat for a minute about plan annuities. So there seems to be a focus recently in legislatively around plan sponsors and that desire to provide participants with the ability to annuitize out a portion of their retirement plan. What are you seeing? I know there's some legislation out there now. What are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with the legislation? Do you think it has any pitfalls?
The longevity risk in a defined contribution system, whether it's a 401k or 403b or 457, is real. And it's a risk that most participants don't understand, but it can certainly derail a safe and secure retirement. And I've thought for a long time that it's important for legislation to facilitate the ability of not only plan sponsors, because we speak of this as a plan sponsor initiative or responsibility. I think individuals need more education and access to products and services that can help mitigate the risk. To me, longevity is one of the major risk factors for people achieving a secure retirement. And I think the industry should get together, the insurance industry should get together and work with plan sponsors more directly and develop really low-cost longevity type products that are lower cost. And longevity products are the kind of things where individuals can buy either through the plan or they can buy it when they're eligible for a rollover, that will ensure some portion of their account, ensure they have some income coming from their defined contribution account when they outlive their normal mortality. So to that effect, Senator Hatch, I had mentioned the the Reachability Retirement Enhancement and Savings Bill, has a provision that would encourage plan sponsors or make it easier in essence and lessen the fiduciary responsibility of monitoring an insurance provider that happens to be providing an annuity. But I think there needs to be innovation in product design. I think there has to, along with this development, which was clearly in that bill and should pass if that moves either the end of the year or next year.
Great, thank you. So one more question for you. You've been around for a while, you've seen a lot. What are your ideas to improve retirement security? Can you share a couple with us?
Well, Emily, I have a handful of ideas from both being on the Hill and off the Hill for nearly 25 years. I think first, I think it would really be helpful if the federal government made a national announcement, policy announcement on how much people need for a secure retirement. And I think it has two parts. I think it's important for the government to say that the government through Social Security is going to provide X amount of income replacement. And then The balance to either 80 or 85, whatever that number is on you, the individual, to make. I don't think so. Today, when I flew down here, I'm looking around the terminal and having a cup of coffee, and I bet 9 out of 10 people in there have no idea what their Social Security benefit is, how much it is, what it means in terms of income replacement, and certainly they don't translate their savings rate in their defined contribution plan into an income replacement. Those need to come together, and the federal government can actually do a real service to individuals by putting that out there and giving people a benchmark. I mean, they do it with calories, they do it with cigarette labels, so why not do it in retirement and over time get people's attention? I think the second area, Emily, is this area on longevity. As we are now pretty much into a full defined contribution system, meaning most people don't have the benefit of a defined benefit plan anymore, people don't understand then how to, in essence, ensure that the risk that they will not outlive their money. And I think innovations in this area, including the provision in Senator Hatch's bill, will help. But I also think the insurance industry needs to get together with stakeholders and create new products that are cost effective, that can either be bought during the accumulation phase or bought shortly before retirement, so they're cost effective and solve that problem. I think third is leakage. Leakage is a problem in a couple places. It's a problem when people take money out, for example, loans, or they take hardship distributions. And Congress is partly to blame. Whenever there's a natural disaster, they open up the 401k plan, and I understand a lot of people need that money, but there are also fairly liberal loan and withdrawal provisions in plans where you can have multiple loans, you can roll them over. And I think when people use the 401k system, which is the defined contribution system, which may be their only retirement security looking forward, they need to know that this money is special and it needs to have limited access, and they need to keep it in the plan. And Emily, I have a couple other ideas in my list of improvements to the system. I think one is we clearly need to simplify and reduce the risk to plan sponsors sponsoring plan. Policymakers and plan sponsors, record keepers, we talk about this all the time, but we need serious movement on this. Plan sponsors are just not in the business generally of assuming that kind and managing the risk that goes with the retirement plan, and certainly all the compliance costs. And I think there needs to be new ideas, whether it's this pooled plan idea where employers can join and then offload the record keeping and investment risk to others, which is also in Senator Hatch's RISA bill. I think it's a step in the right direction. And then the other idea, which is kind of in this sort of category of bigger brain ideas. One of the areas that I've thought about for a long time is this idea of building it, rather than a savings-based approach to contributing and in essence sort of participating in plan, why not an outcomes-related approach? It sort of has elements of the old defined benefit plan where the employer made contributions and made a guarantee of the percentage of pay that they wanted to replace for a secure retirement. And the idea here would be to create the ability of plan sponsors to actually create plans across multiple benefits. So think about taking your 401k or your 403b or 457, adding it to your health savings account, which has a savings component as well, and then developing the employers and employee contribution structure such that it is aimed at replacing a certain percentage of income. So it does, in that sense, sound like a defined benefit plan. But at each moment in life, aligning benefits across multiple products to actually help people at any point in time feel comfortable they're at a replacement rate. So, for example, at certain places, you would take the health savings account savings component, add it to the match and the employer's contribution and the employee's contribution, and help the employee understand that they need to save to an income replacement rate, that when you connect all the dots during your life of work and your participation in plans, it will help achieve a secure retirement. And that's an idea that our rules and regulations don't permit now, and maybe this could be a pilot project where employers could do in. I think the other thing that happens is, and this idea came to me a couple years ago, is you think about how benefits are designed and offered to the participant. On Monday, the healthcare sellers come in and say, "I need this much of the employee's paycheck to provide healthcare, the most important benefit." On Tuesday, the retirement people come in and say, "I need this much out of the participant's salary to do that." Wednesday, the disability, long-term and short-term come in. Then the life insurance people come in on Thursday, and there's very little coordination at the plan sponsor level to say, is that the right combination of benefits? And are we helping the employee buy the right amount of that benefit so they maximize the type of benefit they need? Because all these benefits are going to help create current and future security. And I think more can be done to coordinate those and provide employees on a pathway so they can actually have more efficient benefit structures, so they can save more when they need to save early in their career, for example. Make sure that they fill up the health savings account when they need to, because they anticipate their family, they might have children, and they have higher medical needs, for example. And then later in life, you start to shift those benefits more back towards retirement and less towards life insurance or healthcare, whatever the case may be. And by doing that, you're helping the individual create an outcome base while they're with you at the plan sponsor. And we need rules and regulations to try to let employers experiment with that.
Doug, thank you so much for sharing all of this information with us. We really appreciate your time today.
Happy to be here, Emily. Thank you.
Thank you for watching.